It's Christmas time. There's no need to be afraid. At Christmas time, we let in light and we banish it.
Seguramente ustedes recuerdan este tema que se volvió famoso en nuestro país a partir del año 1985 como una respuesta de dos músicos ingleses, Bob Geldof y Midge Ure. Do They Know It's Christmas? It was the start for a salvation for famine, against famine in Ethiopia. And I understand, thank you Midge Ure for this interview, I understand that it all started with a phone call.
Yeah.
You were on television, how did it was?
I was doing a music show, I think with Ultravox, which was co-hosted by Bob Geldof's girlfriend at the time. And I'd known Bob and Paula for many years, and Bob was on the phone to Paula, and she handed the phone to me, and he said, I've just seen the news footage of a famine in Ethiopia. He said, it's biblical, it's hideous, and I want to do something, but the Boomtown Rats don't exist anymore. I don't feel capable of doing it on my own. Will you help? So we met up a couple of days later and realized that the way to generate the most money immediately was to make a Christmas record. And we had to write a Christmas record. We couldn't just do a standard Christmas song because 50% of the money generated from any record goes to the writers. So we had to write something. So we ended up putting this song together and thought that it wasn't that good. It wasn't a very good song. But if we got all our friends to come along and put their names and voices to it, it might be successful. At a time when everybody else seemed to have so much, it just seemed obscene to not do something. So with musicians, it's not difficult to get together and do what you normally do, and that's sing, make a record, but do it for someone else, not do it for yourself.
But you went a little bit further with Live Aid and other organizations.
We did.
What was the outcome? What did you learn? What perspective did you develop for charity and helping people around the world?
Well, initially it was very difficult. We were given advice by George Harrison, the Beatle, about how to look after the finances. So we set up a body of people to help us do that, the Band-Aid Trust. And the initial finances that we generated were immediate aid. So we had to send food and medication and out immediately and help. So that went on for about 3 months until the famine started to change. Then we had to develop the idea of Live Aid.
What was the start of Ultravox precisely?
Well, I joined Ultravox. I wasn't the original singer. Ultravox had been in existence since the mid-70s. And I was, in the late 70s, early 80s, I was doing a music project called Visage. And I wanted to work with all my favourite musicians, one of whom happened to be the keyboard player in Ultravox. What did I do? I joined the band. They were just, it was the most exciting music I'd ever heard when we got together with no money at all. And we made a sound. The sound was just magnificent. This hybrid of electronic synthesizers and rock instrumentation and classical music all mixed together. It was just great. I loved it. My father drove a van, a truck, all his life, and he wanted my brother and I to become engineers, and that was a good job to have, to be an engineer. So I got the job. I was an apprentice engineer for 2 years, and then I was given the offer to join a full-time band. I was playing music all the way through. I was born in a slum house in the outskirts of Glasgow in Scotland. So this tiny little apartment we had no heating, never mind a piano. We had no musical instruments at all. All we had was a radio. But the radio was enough to feed my imagination. Hearing music just took me out of the reality of what I was living in and took me somewhere else. And that's a powerful thing.
What's your soundtrack?
My soundtrack, you know what, I would have to, I think at different periods of your life, it's different music, because your taste in music changes. So when I was young, it would be the Beatles, and then it would be David Bowie, and it would be Roxy Music, and then it would be, you know, Led Zeppelin, and I have a huge, wide taste in music.
If I was music,
Yeah.
complete the phrase. If I was music.
If I was music, I'd change people's lives, because that's what music does.
If I was a child.
If I was a child, there's a naivety you have when you're young that you lose. You know, just like a child does amazing things when they're young, but when you grow up, you become embarrassed, so you don't do it. And I think music's like that. When you're young, you write things you wouldn't do when you're much older, because you're not scared. If I was poetry, I would write it on walls. You know, poetry has changed man's thinking for centuries, and hopefully it will never change.
And if I was a cook.
If I was a cook, I would have won MasterChef, not just come in second or third.
Right, okay, so you like cooking.
I do.
I know.
I
2007,
well,
Celebrities MasterChef.
MasterChef. I started cooking because I thought it would impress the girls, and it did.
Really?
Yeah. When I was younger. Oh, yeah.
The way to the heart is through the stomach.
Absolutely.
What's your specialty then?
I was told on MasterChef it was Asian fusion, they called it. It is, it's creative. Except with music, it takes you such a long time to make, it takes such a long time to come out. You know, at least once you've started making a meal, you can enjoy the fruits of your labor instantly. And if you're sharing it with other people, you get the praise straight away. With an album, it takes you a year before someone says, well done. Music, as I've said many times, it transcends race and creed and colour and language and barriers and borders and all of that stuff. All the stuff that separates us. Music doesn't, because of how it's transmitted. It goes through the air. You know, we can pick it up on our radios, we can pick it up on our internet. You know, it's an amazing tool. You know, so why wouldn't we teach children, you know, how to do that? Teach them how to stand up in front of a room of people and perform. That doesn't matter whether you're singing or dancing or playing or speaking. You know, being able to communicate is the answer to it all.
Thank you very much for the interview. Ahí tiene usted Midge Ure, una leyenda de la música y del activismo de la caridad en el mundo, que se presenta increíblemente por primera vez en la Ciudad de México.